empirical studies of second language learning as situated practice. Now, the basic assumption that these studies take into consideration is that learning takes place in social contexts and learning is situated. That is, it happens within social context and it is also at times applicable in a given context. When the learners apply what they have learned from a specific context to something outside, that is a different step that they take apart from the learning what they have done. However, the social context of learning is extremely important, and this learning happens in communities of practice through dialogue, through interaction, and through increasing participation. Now, if we want to take an example of what a community of practice is, being teachers, the most common or the most easy example to follow is that of a classroom. So a classroom ideally, not always, but ideally should be a community of practice, although it needs effort on the part of the teachers to actually turn them into communities of practice. There have been several studies which have provided us with evidence that when classrooms turn into communities of practice, when people come together in communities of practice, the learning becomes more successful. So you have Toohey, who did a number of studies in 2000 and 2001. And in one of her studies, that is the ethnography of 6 young English as second language learners, what she tried to do was to track over a long period of time how the children actually developed certain identities, how did they construct their sense of self while they participated in the class to become second language learners or proficient learners. And then she also tried to document different patterns of participation, because what she wanted to see was that what are the patterns of participation that can lead to successful or unsuccessful language learning. So, as anticipated, she realized that some children were more successful in the second language learning than the other language learners. And the reason that she gives is that somehow these were the learners who were at the periphery. By periphery, we mean that they were outside, almost at the edges of this community of practice, because their second language learning skills were not up to the mark. However, the people at the core, the teacher and other students, when they allowed the participation or accepted the input of these learners who were at the periphery, they became what she calls legitimate peripheral participants. And by increased participation, they were able to learn the second language more proficiently than their peers. Now, this participation affected not only greater learning opportunities that came to them. They were given more space, they were given more voice, and then they also had access to resources. That is, whatever the task was being done, or whenever new tasks would come, they would be able to participate and actually partake of whatever the resources were available to the group. So over here, what do we learn about about learning or second language learning as a situated practice. Yes, we learn that learning is situated, happens in communities of practice, but the takeaway point is that relationships within this community of practice are extremely important. Because if the relationships are within this community of practice are competitive and not collaborative, as has been found in other studies, then the second language learners who are at the periphery or who are at the edges of the community of practice might not be able to learn the language efficiently.